Hi Mark, it's good to see you again.
Great to see you again, Lee.
2 years ago we did a set of videos and we covered quite a lot of areas that Tintri were doing at the time. So what's changed in that last 2 years? I'm sure there's quite a lot of updates.
Wow, the product portfolio has evolved massively in the last couple of years, both in terms of software features but also in terms of hardware. So we refreshed the hybrid flash family, so we now have the 800 series. But we also introduced an all-flash family of products, and there's actually 9 different flavors in there, so you can choose the controller size in terms of performance and mix and match the capacities that you operate with the different controller types. So it's a very flexible model there. We introduced a vast array of software capabilities, so Tintri Global Center has been enhanced. And from Tintri Global Center, when we last spoke, it was really a monitoring and management tool, but now it's actually evolved into more of a configuration tool as well, where you can set policies on individual VMs or groupings of VMs, so you can specify your snapshot schedules, your replication policy, even quality of service, so you can go out to the environment and say find all the VMs, for example, that have SQL in the name or belong to a specific customer, and then you can start to apply those policies. So that central management is pretty important. And the other thing is, when we introduce the all-flash family, we can actually support up to 5,000 virtual machines from a single 2U appliance, and then when you couple that back with Tintri Global Center's ability to manage up to 32 of those appliances, you can now manage up to 160,000 virtual machines from a single pane of glass. So pretty significant on that side of things.
Definitely a major change. I understand you can scale out with that product as well, but also you can actually move a lot of the statistical data around as the virtual machines move as well.
Absolutely. So Tintri Global Center, there is a new feature we recently introduced back in May, in fact, called VM Scaleouts. It works completely differently to how traditional storage guys might think of Scaleout. This is all about virtual machine load balancing and driving the efficiency of your environment. So whether you have all flash or hybrid flash, whether you have Tintri's first generation product or current generation product, we can actually make recommendations on where your virtual machines should live, whether that be hybrid or all flash. So it's a pretty flexible model. When we move the virtual machines, what we're able to do is retain all of the policy and historical information about that virtual machine. We even can move the actual snapshot data itself to the new appliance as well. So it's a very, very flexible model for scaling your virtual machine deployments.
What about the replication side? Because it was pretty basic, but it was per virtual machine, which was unique at the time. How has that been enhanced?
So when we last spoke, the minimum RPO, the minimum granularity which we could actually replicate or take a snapshot was 15 minutes. So you could mix and match and have very different policies for each virtual machine on the box. So you could have 15 minutes, you could have hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. But more recently we introduced the ability to replicate those snapshots at a 1 minute granularity, which for most people is good enough. But as we've moved up into the enterprise space, certain mission critical applications, certainly in finance for example, or some of the cloud service providers, they actually mandate for many of their applications they need a synchronous mirroring capability, synchronous replication. So we're in the process of adding the ability to both have a transparent failover capability between Tintri appliances, but also underpinned by synchronous replication. So that's coming soon.
What about software applications? I know there's been the Sync VM has been introduced to the list of software applications.
Yeah, Sync VM is a very interesting feature, and it's fundamentally exists because of the fact we are VM aware, so we have VM aware storage. So what Sync VM allows you to do, there's sort of 3 major areas for Sync VM. The first is very fast restoration of individual virtual machines. So you can go back through the history of snapshots for your virtual machine and recover that VM very quickly and very efficiently from any of the snapshots in the history. But we always preserve the history even after you've tried to restore that virtual machine. So it's very much like Apple's time capsule from that perspective. So if you recover a virtual machine from a given point in time, but it doesn't actually have the data you were hoping or you were looking for, you could go further back in time, or you could wind the clock forwards again, so you can move backwards and forwards through the history at will.
Sounds very useful.
Now, outside of that, Sync VM also allows you to recover individual files or folders in a very efficient fashion as well. You know what users are like for accidentally deleting things. And then outside of that, the third application is really for the sort of dev test, DevOps type environment, where they need to be able to very quickly develop and refresh individual applications So what SyncVM allows us to do in that particular environment is to resynchronize individual virtual disks across VMs. So for example, you might have a parent VM, you make some changes to the primary data set, and then you want to just reset or resynchronize the changes that you've made in that virtual disk with any of the child VMs. So we can do that. In fact, we have the ability to refresh or resync any virtual disk on the Tintri data store with any VM that's on there. So very flexible in terms of what you can do with that.
And so there's been quite a lot of change then. So introducing a range of hybrid, more flash arrays, also the expandability, and then Tintri's capability to scale out. So a lot of changes there. What would be good is actually for us to revisit each one of those functionality in turn to do a bit more granularity with some separate videos.
Happy to run through that.
Thank you very much then, Mark.
You're welcome.